Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon or good evening for across the world, people across the globe. Uh, Sorry for the delay. We had some technical issues initially, but now we are ready, good to go. So thank you all for attending and for your patience as we get started. So first, we would like to give a quick introduction about our organization, and I would like to invite Dr. Nisha Venugopal, who is our program manager. Nisha?
Yes. Hi, thanks, Reena. Hello, everyone. I'm Nisha Venugopal. I'm the program manager at IndoUSrare, and it's a great pleasure and privilege to welcome you for the fourth in our webinar series. We're very excited for today's talk, and we hope that all of us will be inspired and we will leave the webinar with a lot of learnings from our speakers' experiences. But before we begin, I'd like to give a brief overview of IndoUSrare, our programs and our vision for all who are joining us for the first time. We are the Indo-US Organization for Rare Diseases. We are a non-profit working towards affordable therapies for rare diseases. We were founded to address a key issue that hinders the advancement of therapies for rare diseases. What you can see on the screen is an image that shows the global distribution of clinical trials as is available on clinicaltrials.gov, which is the world's largest clinical trial database. Now, what you can see here is that most of the clinical trials are conducted in the US or the EU, as is depicted in red, and very few of them exist in the rest of the world. The world lags far, far behind. And of specific interest is the Indian subcontinent, which contributes to less than 3% of the world's clinical trials. Now, this is a problem because this region contributes to around a quarter of the world's population, and 3% of trials representing 25% of the world's population is concerning. And this is for all clinical trials, not specifically for rare diseases, which might make this map view even more stark. Now, as we all know, there are more than 7,000 rare diseases known so far, and more are being put up to this list every day. And as the former founding director of the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences at NIH, Dr. Christopher Austin put it, at the current rate that we are going, it will take us around 2,000 years to have at least one therapy for every known rare disease now. So this is the key issue that IndoUSrare aims to tackle. How are we doing this? We aim to address this issue by building collaborative bridges between the Eastern and Western hemispheres. Our mission is, Our mission is to connect rare disease stakeholders in India, the US, and globally, and to help build collaborative and cross-border collaborations for research as well as policy development. And we also advocate for rare disease patients world over. A few of our initiatives through which we are doing this are our Patients Alliance program, our Corporate Alliance program, and our various programs for education and awareness, as well as research. As you can see, most of our activities are focused on cross-border collaborations, and we believe this is crucial to bridge the gap and the divide that exists between the East and West in terms of the availability of life-saving therapies for rare diseases. At this juncture, I'd like to highlight our program, our Patient Alliance Members program, and these are the logos of our members. We are very privileged to work with these groups. We currently have 21 members who collectively represent over 500 diseases and 15,000 patients from across the globe. And this is our set of partners in our mission. How can you contribute and engage with IndoUSrare? Well, you can apply for our Patient Alliance membership if you are a patient group. You can subscribe to our newsletter, stay engaged and informed on what we are up to. You can also reach out and for discussions, or even refer for possible collaborations or volunteer your time with us. Please do connect with us for any of the above through our various social media handles, and also feel free to personally reach out to us at admin@indousrare.org. We'll now move on to our main event, But first, a few housekeeping points. Please do type in your questions in the Q&A box, and we will read it out to the speaker. There is a short feedback survey that will be sent out. We request you to please complete it and submit. And in case you do have to drop off or someone did miss the event, it is being recorded and it will be posted on our website as well as the YouTube channel, so you will be able to see it. So without further delay, let's begin our webinar. And I'd like to invite our Director of Research Programs, Dr. Reena Kartha, to introduce our speaker.
Thanks,
Reena, over to you.
Nisha. Thanks, Nisha. It's my privilege to introduce our speaker, Mohamed Duklef. Mr. Duklef actually is going to share his amazing life story about being a rare disease patient and the journey that he took and the lessons he learned along the way. So he was born in Libya and he moved to the United States, and he's going to share that why did he do that and what did he achieve by doing that. And his life story is really interesting, and I really encourage everyone to tell your people to listen to his story. So to introduce him, he has a pharmacy degree from the El-Mergib University School of Pharmacy in Libya, and currently he works as a pharmacist intern at SCL Lutheran Medical Center in Colorado. And he also holds a position of International Liaison for EBlifestyle, EB being the Epidermolysis Bullosa, the condition that he's suffering from. And it's a nonprofit organization, and he's going to share all that with you today. So Mohamed, please take it from here. And thank you for accepting our invitation.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Reena. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mohamed Duklef, and as Dr. Reena described, I have a skin disease that's called Epidermolysis Bullosa. And today I would like to go with you and speak about my journey living this disease, and also the journey of going through these clinical trials. I would like to talk about the clinical trials, which I see the real hope to cure rare diseases. But before that, I would like to give some introduction about Epidermolysis Bullosa, or the short name EB. EB is a really rare genetic skin condition that makes the skin very fragile. Like you can imagine the fragility of the butterfly. It's exactly the same thing. The main issue with Epidermolysis Bullosa is that there is a lack in a protein that connects, if you can see my mouse here, connects the two layers of the skin, the epiderms and the derms. And that lack makes the skin very fragile, easy to tear off, easy to blister. And these wounds can be happen from inside the body, like in the mucous membrane, or outside. And here, just these two pictures, I want to show the differences between the skin of healthy person without EB and a person with EB. On the left side, if you can see these little strips, shows the protein, for example, it works like as a glue, and that would attach the two layers together. On the right side, that's the skin of people with Epidermolysis Bullosa. That protein that works as glue is missing, and that's the main problem with our condition, is the lack of that protein. EB is a really rare disease. It affects about 500,000 worldwide. People with Epidermolysis Bullosa in general, they refer to as the butterfly children, and that name came from the fragility of their skin. You can imagine touching the butterfly wings, just like imagine touching them, that will lead to dust in your fingers, and that just describe how really easy the skin of people with EB can be injured, or how fragile they are. Here I would like to give some imaginations or description how people with Epidermolysis Bullosa live, or their life look like. This is just a simple thing that walking, because these blisters and wounds are happening all over our bodies, and walking could be as painful as this picture. That's because either blisterings on your feet, or if there's wounds, or if the shoe itself is not comfortable, or if it's rubbing against the skin, that can makes the skin to tear off. So It's really painful just to walk, and some people even are not able to walk at all, and they have to use wheelchair. Here is eating. That's another big problem with people for people with EB, because EB affects the mucous membrane. And imagine you are eating and you have a blister in your mouth or in your tongue, and you're trying to chew a food. That can be as painful as you can see in the picture. It also affects the throat and the esophagus, and um, blisters can happen there, and also wounds can also happen in that area. And also, a lot of people with EB suffer from malnutrition because they cannot eat, or because their esophagus is very narrow due to the scar tissue. And a lot of them live on the G tube for feeding. So that's like a normal thing for a lot of people, but for people with EB is a struggle. Another issue here, like, just to describe just a little bit of daily life, maybe sitting on your sofa or chair, it can be as painful as you can see on the picture. If you have wounds or blisters in your back, it's gonna be really painful, just to do that. Another thing here, changing your clothes, because the fragility of the skin. Clothes also can be really another problem because they might get stuck on the wounds if the wound is not covered. Also, if your baby or anybody with EB, with especially the severe type, or just removing the clothes or putting them on might cause friction, and that friction will lead to either a blister or a wound. So it's another issue that everybody with EB live with. And here, I would like to describe how EB and also rare diseases inherited in general. Um, in general, they either inherited through dominant pattern or recessive pattern. Um, I would like to start with the dominant here. Let's say the dad and mom, the dad is a carrier, or even because with the dominant, we only need one gene for the person to be born with the symptoms of that disease. Imagine that this guy has a dominant form or a pattern of that disease, and the mom is completely healthy. If the father passes that gene to their child, and the mom passes the healthy gene to their child, one gene that came from the father is enough to cause the disease. And that's like the chance of having a person with that disease 50%, and also it's a 50% chance of having a healthy child. Here, the recessive pattern, which is describes my diagnosis and my siblings' diagnosis. My parents, they can be the example of the two couples here. They don't have the disease, but they are carrier of the gene that has the disease. The chances here of having a child with the rare disease is at 25%, and that's because the child must inherit one gene from each parent to form the disease, or for the symptoms to show up. Let's say here the father has a gene that has a disease and the other gene is healthy. If that unhealthy gene passed onto the child, and if the mom also passes the unhealthy gene to the child, that will make the disease. And this is who I am right now here. That's what I have here. If the mom or the dad passes a healthy gene and the other passes the unhealthy gene, that will lead to a person without the symptoms, but they will be a carrier for that gene. And thus, I have a sister who is the same thing. She doesn't have EB, but she's a carrier for that gene. And that gene can be passed on for the next generation. So that's a little bit of explanation how the difference between the two patterns. So I hope that really answers any questions you might have. I would like to talk about my life in Libya as someone with a rare disease, because, um, I'm sure as any other people with rare diseases living in a developing countries can be, the struggle will be maybe double or treble than, living in a developed country. Um, Here, like I would start with, my life. I was born in 1989 in Libya, in the city of Al-Qums, and I was diagnosed with epidermolysis bullosa, like not really soon after I was born, because it wasn't really known back then what is this disease. I was misdiagnosed several times. I was given medications that have nothing to do with my skin disease. And also, the first time I was diagnosed, I would say like I was maybe 2 or 3 years after pediatric physicians saw my symptoms, just blisterings on my feet and hands. And he just made like diagnosis based on observation, that's EB. But the official diagnosis that I have, the recessive form of dystrophic EB, was made in Austria through a skin biopsy, but was confirmed later in 2014 genetically when I moved to the United States. I would like to talk a little bit about my family. I'm not the only person with EB in my family. I have two brothers and one sister. We all born with the same disease, same diagnosis. My parents, they didn't have the disease, but they are carrier to it. In my culture, relative marriage is common. Even that they are not even relatives. So it was really, I would say, weird that how they both were carrier for the same gene and for the same disease. But overall, three or four with EB and one sister, she's just a carrier, but doesn't have the disease. Um, the complications of EB, as I described earlier with the pictures, but like in general, or at least personally, because EB affects like it might look like just a skin disease, but honestly, the complications are systemic and affects the entire body inside and outside. And the problems that, like for example, I face that blisterings in my mouth. The mouth gets so small, like I got a lot of cavities because I cannot even use a toothbrush. Until like when I came to the US, they told me that your teeth need to be removed, and that's another complication. I have no teeth because of it. And just working on my mouth is another hard issue for a lot of dentists because it's so small and the skin's so fragile. Other problems is like esophagus. Because of my complications, my esophagus got narrowed like badly when I was like 10 years old. And to like when I went to Austria, they had to remove my entire esophagus because even with dilatation, it did not really help me. And they decided either to survive on a G tube or just to do a surgery that never been done back then. And they have done it, and they pulled the stomach up instead of like to cover the gap from removing the esophagus. And since then, I'm still surviving on that. But in general, many people who suffer with like with the severe type, like the one I have, there's a high chance of a skin cancer. Um, People who don't walk, the hands are deformated. Like if you can see my hands here, they look fine to many people, but the majority of people, their hands are like closed because of these frequent wounds and blistering, and that leads the skin to connect to each other and make their hands really like closed like this. Finally, I would like to talk about the education and EB. This is I feel really important for people with EB or their or parents. Imagine you have a child with this fragile skin. Imagine their childhood that you're gonna send them to a public school, and you can think how children usually play. Their play is mostly like running, jumping. It's a little bit aggressive for someone with such a fragile skin. So it was really hard for my like parents even to keep me in school because they wait like every day when I come home to make sure that I don't have blisters or wounds or I don't have anything that from that day. The adulthood time is also a very challenging because um, when you go and expose yourself to the society, many people will look at you like, especially when something on the skin like, oh, that's maybe a contagious disease. um, People will make comments or it's just because they don't understand that it's just a genetic. It's not like a curse. It's not like um, a contagious disease. They just need to be educated about it. And when I enrolled to the School of Pharmacy, to be honest, that really helped me. First of all, learn English, and second of all, is to understand my disease from like medical professional perspective instead of just a regular person. And that helped me understand my disease, and also it helped me to explain to people how my disease is, like what's the problem with it, instead of just saying, oh, just a skin disease. And I'm sure it's so important for all of us with rare diseases. It's knowledge is power. And if you understand your disease very well and you know what's the problem, if it's like genetically, and also what is lacking, or what's the main reason of the disease, if you understand that, you can actually make people understand it and look at it, oh, it's just that, like make it so simple. Like if somebody with diabetes, you're gonna tell them it's just like a lack of insulin, or your pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin. So it can be as simple as that if you understand your disease. Um, Next, I would like to, my journey in the United States, which is another like completely different life. And many ask me like why I came to the United States. And honestly, the main reason is to find a treatment for myself and my siblings. Back when I graduated from School of Pharmacy and I learned like about, like I get so passionate about my disease and understanding it, and also looking if there's any therapies outside. Especially, I heard about the stem cells back then and how it can be, like I would say, a revolution in treating chronic or hard diseases. So I was searching if there's something for that applied somewhere in Europe or in the US, until I came across this bone marrow transplant at the University of Minnesota. Back then, it wasn't like a trial; it was more like a treatment they use on people. I understood it's the process of that therapy is dangerous because you have to shut down your immune system in order for your body to not fight that bone marrow from the donor. But that was the main reason for me to come to the US. Unfortunately, I wasn't a good candidate for that therapy because I got misdiagnosed again in the US, because they thought that I have one gene with the recessive form and one gene with the dominant form, and that excluded me from the therapy. But later on, the diagnosis was corrected, that I have a recessive form. But that's really the main thing. I came to the US. After a while, like after I wasn't a good candidate, I decided like um, I started looking for alternatives, and that's why I decided to stay in the U.S. because the main reason I came here is to find like better healthcare for myself and my siblings, and I started like looking for what else I can get from here, what else I can try, and that's where I decided like it's better for us to stay. Myself and my brother, we stayed here, and living is not gonna be easy. Especially imagine you are a person with a rare disease with all these complications you have. Plus to that, first you're gonna think about how I'm gonna live here. I need to find a job. I need to get the papers, like work permit, social security. Um, also if you have disabilities or need to be accommodated, that's another big problem because not everybody will be open to accommodate your situation. It wasn't like as easy, but if you really like insisted and you look like you have to change your life, you can make it. Um, I would like you to describe a little bit about the healthcare because comparing healthcare back in Libya and healthcare in the US, I can tell you there's a huge difference. Just to start with the bandagings, in when I was in Libya, the wound care supplies they were so limited. I was my mom used to use whatever comes to her hand to cover my skin and my wounds. Sometimes she used just cloth. for my wounds, because we don't have like proper bandaging, she just takes a regular gauze, immerse it in olive oil, and put it on the wound. And imagine the next day, because the oil get absorbed by the skin, is not like waxy, the entire bandage is going to be stuck on the wound. And imagine just removing that stuck bandage from the skin. It takes hours, and that's a daily task. So when I compare that to the US, where I feel like I'm rich here because of these available supplies, like I can pick from whatever option I want to try. Because these bandages don't stick, yes, they are not like change the wound size, but it makes my life easy on the daily basis. Plus to that, there's the options if for like seeing do specialties. Um, like if you are interested in clinical trials, you can find lots of options here. So that's a really a change, life change to me, and I'm glad of making that decision. Finally, is how I got involved with EB community. That came actually after I attended the biggest conference in the U.S. for people with EB. It's a Deborah Care Conference, and honestly, that is the really the best way for me was to get involved with all kind of people with EB. It's like where I met like hundreds of people, either families or people with the disease, where I met all the specialties like doctors, researchers, everybody involved in this field. I got in touch and contact with them, and that's like was the main or how I got involved into it. Plus, social media today plays a great role. So with your rare disease, if you can find any groups on Facebook, that can be really changing for your life and for your family, because someone will guide you to something you never knew about, and you might get learn something different and new. So I really encourage you to like be active on social media and see if you can find these groups and join them. Now I would like to talk about the main topic, which is the clinical research that I look as is our real hope. After I talk to you about my life in Libya and my life in the United States and living with this disease for like 31 years right now, plus my siblings who have the same thing, I realized that the only way to treat EB or to cure it is through the clinical research. Like, I tried all sort of things. I tried cultural therapies from my country. People believe in stuff and they say, use this will cure you, use that will help you. I tried like expired products because of the shortage of the medical supplies in my country. I'm here, I'm trying all these good supplies I have, like the bandaging, all ointment and cream. None of them really changed anything in my health and in my wound size, as I have a large wounds in my body that never heals. They always growing even bigger. They always infected. And I learned that the only way is to fix the root of that cause. The root is my diseases, or maybe your disease due to a gene mutation. And if that problem doesn't get fixed, that means any therapy you use might not be as effective for your situation as it could be for like a gene therapy. So my realization that the best way is, or the only way for us is through really these researchers, and that's where it comes our role as well, which I will speak a little bit about it later. Um, I would like to tell you a little bit about my clinical trial journey in the U.S. Right after I found out that I'm not good candidate for the bone marrow transplant, I started thinking of alternatives, like what else I can use or try in order to improve my quality of life, because my wound size are really big. Like it takes my entire back from the bottom of my head to the bottom of my back, and I'm at great risk of skin cancer because these chronic wounds lead to carcinoma skin cancer for several people with this kind that I have. And this where I start like searching for clinical trials that help, people with this disease. And because of my search, I keep always searching about these trials online. I came across these trials at the University of Stanford, and that's where it was my first start. That trial that I started with them, it wasn't really for healing the wounds, but it was just a start. That was to help people with EB to treat their itchy skin, because we have a problem with itching. And imagine you itch your fragile skin, you're gonna tear your skin. And that trial was how is make like trying a new therapy to help people with this disease to treat that itchy problem. And that was the start, because they know me and I know them, and they have different trials, and they saw my interest in like trying different things. And that's like it's really important. Like if you get an opportunity to try something, don't underestimate it, because that can lead to something bigger later. And that's how I really learned that that little trial helped me um, to open the door for me to more trials, because they were looking for people and they telling me about the things they have and also the future trials they have. And that's how I got posted, which it's really important for everybody to do. The question that many people will ask, like why I did participate. um, I have really two reasons. First, um, hoping that one of these trials one day will help at least to heal my wounds. I'm not saying to cure my disease, but only to heal the wounds and make them closer. And the second reason is my personal belief that I feel I play an important role along with the researchers, like our role as important as the researchers, and we work or we can be like a team, because without us, these trials are not gonna continue. They might stop from at phase one, because the diseases are rare, and if they don't have enough patients to do their trials, nothing gonna be um, finished, and the trial might even stop. So I believe that it's my obligation that I need to help my community in giving my body for to try these therapies. And I feel it's an important to everybody to feel that they have a role and to help treat that rare disease, because it's rare, and usually companies don't like really invest in them. It's just how many thousands in that country or over in the world. So we have the the responsibility with that. The most important thing is the fear that associated with the trials. Like many people will think that, oh, like trying something different is going to be scary. Imagine if it's a treatment, and imagine if that treatment actually is a gene therapy. And I can tell you from my experience that I was really afraid just starting my first trial, because I didn't know, like when I asked questions to the researchers, like what the side effects you note from this therapy, they will give you general, but they don't have specific, because it hasn't been tried on human. So basically, I am the one who will give them the information. And the way I overcame the fear is through, if you understand your disease and if you understand that therapy how it works on your disease, it will help you honestly like think that like will help you to like feel that that therapy might work in your situation. And another thing, if you have a lot of complications, if you feel nothing is working, that's another thing is help me. Like I was, saying that there's nothing really available for me, and I'm already in danger with, from this disease. So I don't think it's going to be worse for myself to try something new. You know, I don't think something else is going to harm, as maybe as a risk of a skin cancer. The other important thing is that to have a trust in your care team. Um, like for me, I really appreciate the care team that I work with. They really caring. They make sure they do everything correct. They follow all the protocols. They make sure that they do everything to stop any side effects right away, and they keep you under observation. So like with the team that you deal with, that will give some comfort that you are not alone trying that medicine. And also when you give them that trust, that will help you also to overcome the fear you will have. I understand it's still not easy thing, but from my experience, it was helpful for me to, be encouraged and try these trials. Another important topic is the difficulties in participating, because if you are interested and you feel like yes, I want to do it, um, unfortunately not gonna be easy because you might face a lot of difficulties on your way. For example, from my personal like experience, um, in the US, like you have to work every single day. If you have a full time, you have to stick with your full time. Um, if you don't work, actually, you will be in a financial burden. So in order to survive, you have to work. And working a full time, that mean and participating in these studies, that mean you're gonna miss a lot of work. And if you don't have a good manager who's gonna understand you and who's gonna give you the accommodation and work with you, it's going to be hard actually to participate in that trial. For example, speaking about the gene therapy that I participated at Stanford, that trial required me to travel to Stanford from Minnesota every 2 weeks. And the trial takes like 2 days, one for the infusion, it takes like a whole full day, and the other day for observation, and also to do a blood test. So that requires me 3 days. I have to be one day before, and also the day for the infusion and third day for the observation. And plus, I travel back on that day and I work the next day. But that means I have to ask my manager for 3 days off every 2 weeks. And so it's going to be really super difficult if you don't have that kind of nice managers, or if you don't have the flexibility. Add to it, if you are parents and you have kids, and if you have a child with a rare disease and if you want to take them, maybe the parents have to go with the child. That's another problem because you have like to coordinate that with the mom, with dad, with the kids and schoolings and everything. So it's gonna be really difficult, to get to like all that organizing and make that trip, because it's once you are in the trial, it's going to be a really long journey. It's not like a month or two, might be even more. Yes, you have the opportunity to drop off, but I'm sure nobody want to like start something and drop off from it. So consider these difficulties if you are interested in these trials. Lastly, I would like to speak about the benefits. Um, when I when I doing these trials, I get asked many times like, did this trial help you? Did they really heal your wounds? To be honest, it's not going to be a clear answer. It's not going to be yes or no. For myself, my perspective, I look at it from overall, like the entire picture. I see there is benefits. Um, for my wounds, honestly, there's no huge benefits. Like personally, I can tell the trial, the gene therapy I did try, it showed some improvement on my wounds. Like it did heal, like I would say very little, but it showed that that's the only thing that I tried in my entire life that actually showed some positive results. Another thing that it did show some, like, my skin got a little bit stronger. um so that's a little bit of difference it did I get from it. But if I'm going to talk about what other benefits, I will talk about participating in these trials actually very beneficial for the care team and the researchers, because I am the source of the data that they get to continue their trial. Because in order to move from phase 1 to phase 2 or possibly to phase 3, they have they have to have patients enrolled, and they have to have patients who try these therapies and also see like if there's any side effects, if there's any benefits. So these these information, it did help them because they will think that maybe something went wrong, or maybe this type of EB is not good for this trial. Maybe some kind of EB will work on. So like it did help the overall goal, which is curing that rare disease and helping maybe developing a new method of treating that disease, or like you give a lot of information, and that will help your community, and not even maybe yourself, but also the babies that who weren't born yet with this disease. So once they look for disease for therapy, they will find the information ready, and you will be really appreciated for that contribution.
Mohammed, you have 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay. Here I would like to talk about the clinical our role in clinical trials. As I mentioned that us as patients are really vital. We play a vital role in these trials because those doctors and researchers are relying on us. Without us, they cannot move that idea of that therapy outside the lab, and they have to have patients to try on. The other point I would like to talk about is accelerating the process of developing therapies. Like here in the US, everything is like organized, or everything under the FDA, and the FDA has to be convinced, and they have to, that therapy is working. And therefore, the more patients enrolling, the faster are the process gonna proceed. Like things will be moving from phase 1 to 2, or will stop at there. So the more you enroll, the more you will help therapies to go forward. Lastly, is providing data to researchers, including improving the patient's quality of life. I would like to give some insight here because, for example, here in the United States, the FDA, the way they look at what therapy mean is different than what therapy mean to me as a patient. For me as a patient, and many I'm sure with other rare diseases, therapy means maybe improving my quality of life, because I don't want my disease to be cured, but also it could be just to make my wounds heal faster, make my wounds close. And that gives the researchers insight for what patients actually looking for, and so they can help achieve that goal that the patient is looking for. So our participation is very important. Here is, if there is really something magic in my hand, I wish that all countries that will have a better, because from my experience living in a developing country with the lack of a healthcare, makes the struggle treble. The struggle in a country like in the U.S., because lacking of healthcare is a nightmare. Lastly, I would like to give some helpful resources here. This stanfordhealth.org is an amazing website if you are interested in the clinical trials. It's a great website where you can enroll and register yourself if you have the rare disease, if you have a family member. You put all your information, and this website actually will connect patients, advocacy groups, and researchers. And you might be notified if there's any trial in your area that you're looking for. So I encourage you to look at this website. Also, this rarediseases.org, it's a nonprofit organization based in the United States. It's a great website if you are looking for to know more about your disease, if you are interested in connecting with advocacy groups, or also if you would like to look for any clinical trials going on in the US. Finally, is this website, the clinicaltrials.gov, is also really great website. If you interested in participating, you can search your disease, the region you are looking for, and we'll show all the trials that's happening, if they are open for enrollment or not. And also, if you're just interested in learning what's going on in your disease, like what are the trials are happening. So I encourage you to look at these resources. Thank you so much for your patience, and I'm here for if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Mohammed, for an engaging this presentation, and we do have a couple of questions. So I'll just jump in there because we have about 10 minutes. So there's a parent asking about, thanks a lot for sharing your experiences. I have an 11-month-old daughter with RDEB. Just wanted to ask if there is any special clothing that is helpful in preventing or reducing friction on skin. Thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. From what I saw, honestly, the best way to it's not gonna be maybe really helpful. Like it's not easy to do, but many parents they wear I don't know if you have the fast. It's like a small net you wear like on your arms and your body, or if you can just put if there's no wounds, if you can just roll like a small or like a very thin layer of the gauze on the skin, that will help the that will prevent the friction from the clothes. I used to do that when I wear shoes. Sometimes I wear 2-3 socks just to prevent that, but many people will cover the entire arms or the upper body with either wearing that fast, like something you wear, it's very stretchy, or just with these rolling the gauze, like if it's very soft, that will not make the skin blistering. So I hope that solve the issue.
Yep. And one other suggestion I have was maybe like, are you okay if anybody reaches out to us with such questions about that disease like EB? Will it be okay if we forward that question to you later on? Like maybe have them contact you via email or something?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I can share my email or my even cell phone number. I'll be happy to help with any way I can.
Okay. So I'm going to take the question that came here. How many doctors did you see before diagnosis? And the second question is, did you encounter any misdiagnosis?
How many doctors? Honestly, myself and my parents lost faith in doctors in my country because when I go there, we know what we can expect. I would say 2 doctors. One of them was like has more insight with EB. That was the only one we saw. But not for the diagnosis, just for any suggestions for skincare and infection prevention. In the United States, that's where I was able to see doctors, mostly dermatologists and also the research team. That's what I see more frequently because they are really in depth with this disease. I got misdiagnosed. As I mentioned that in Libya, they really like sometimes they like one of the diagnoses were just a fungal infection. And like every time they tell my mom and my dad a totally different diagnosis, and based on that, they just will write a prescription for that diagnosis. And even in the United States, actually, I got my misdiagnosed. I have done a genetic testing here, and I was diagnosed with a rare kind of EB. In the beginning, they told me you have a gene with a recessive dystrophic EB and a gene with a dominant. So basically, I have 2 diseases in myself, or 2 genes with the 2 diseases. And honestly, because just the way I looked at it, I have a sister. She doesn't have EB, but she's a carrier, and that's made me question like if I have the dominant, or if we have the dominant, someone in my family should have the disease, because if like one gene, it should cause the disease, and none of my parents have it. And so like when I went to Stanford to do these trials, they looked at my information. They said no, that what you have is actually recessive, and that actually what makes really sense to me too. So you will still misdiagnose. I mean, that's I feel another problem with the rare diseases. A lot of us get misdiagnosed because it's rare. I hope I answered that question.
Sure. Yeah. You did. So another question on Facebook Live, which is about, just a second. Yeah, Mohammed, you're incredibly courageous and inspiring. So this is from Leslie Munsey Montgomery. So she's saying, can I ask you, what would you like to do that you cannot do? Thank you very much for sharing your incredible story.
Can you repeat the last part? I'm sorry.
So the question is, what would you like to do that you cannot do?
It's gonna be really funny, but what I like to do is to I don't have to stay without bandages on my upper body. Like I can just stay with without bandages for just one day to feel the air touching my skin. It's something I wish to do, but I can't. And also maybe swim. Another thing that I wish to have, but I can't because it's so painful.
Thank you again for sharing your story and being so open about what it is that you're going through. And I think that's really helpful and powerful for others to hear. And one other question is, how do we get Indian patients to enroll in global clinical trials?
That's good question. The one I shared with you, the Stanford held, that's actually if you can register through that website, and also there is this Deborah International, which I think is a great start because it's international Deborah, and they can help you with all the information you need if you are interested, if there's any trials going on in Europe, or if you are interested in the United States. I recommend Deborah of America because they are more engaging through with the patient in the US. But start with Deborah International.
Okay. And there's another question which you sort of answered, but I'll ask it anyway. What clinical trial do you feel most was helpful for you?
So I did try this gene therapy. So as you know, with or people with EB might know that a recessive form of EB is due to lack of collagen 7. And the trial that I tried is basically making that collagen 7 in the lab. And since my body doesn't produce it, just injecting that via IV infusion to my body, just like how, like for example, insulin, you just take it from outside sources. That's like that trial, which I believed is really great. It did show some improvement, but I think because it's a gene therapy, and I'm sure the clinicians are trying to be very cautious with the dose, the amount they inject, and also the frequency of the dosing. It was very not really strong. When I tried the one that is a little bit stronger, it showed better improvement with the multi-frequency. I used to do it every week. I go to the clinic and they give me the infusion. It shows really good improvement. But because they have to try multiple options like every week and every 2 weeks, once they move to the every 2 weeks, it didn't really change anything. So I believe it's gonna be a helpful trial if it's once they find out more about the right dose and the right frequency. The other one is a skin graft, which I'm gonna be participating probably end of July. It's gonna be at Stanford University, which is basically gene editing skin graft. Will take your skin and fix that, or they're gonna add more of collagen 7 to that graft and putting on the wound, because as I mentioned, that's one of the important things to participation is helping those clinicians understand what patients really looking for, because it's not going to be a cure, but this kind of trial will help improve my quality of life by maybe healing my wounds, and that's a big change to me. Yep. So that's one of the trials that I'm looking forward.
And I think that is a very important point. Like, you have to be very realistic about your expectation, and you should kind of share that with the clinician, because otherwise you will never achieve that what you are looking for. And you should be realistic. It could be baby steps with each trial, but you should be willing to spend that time to achieve that baby steps. And that's a really important point. There's one other question. Any idea how the management tools like bandages, etc., can be made more accessible in the developing world?
Honestly, it's just so I am part of a new non-profit organization called EBlifestyle, and because of these problems that people in developing countries lack of that kind of bandaging, we're trying, like, EBlifestyle, we're trying to help people in those countries getting these bandages. We are still early, but that's one of our main goal is to help people in those places. But honestly, it's gonna be really difficult. Like compared to my experience, uh, unless if you're gonna connect with like Deborah International, and they might other resources like um, in different countries, or also there's EB Beyond Borders. Uh, I think they help. Sorry. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yep. Mhm.
Okay, sorry, my AirPods went out of energy.
Mhm.
EB Beyond Borders, actually, I think another source. I have seen some people like living in outside the United States. They get some help, but honestly, it's not gonna be that much because I know it's a daily basis, and you have to have it like every single day.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I wish if there's something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be a lot of supplies, and it is going to be like on a daily basis. So it's so there are a
Yeah.
lot of good comments on the chat box. So I encourage you to check in the chat box, Mohammed. And
Sure.
yep, I think we are close to the hour. So I would like to close this session. And again, I would like to thank all attendees for participating in today's webinar. It will be posted on our website. So please go back and review it or share it with your community, especially people who have the same condition. Please share it with them because Mohammed just shared different resources. And I would also like to put a plug in here. We have another event coming up June 23rd, which is a panel discussion on COVID-19 vaccine safety for rare disease patients. Because with everyone getting vaccinated, there are a lot of questions that have arose asking about, is it safe to have this vaccine? Which vaccine? What are these different types of vaccines? So we are arranging a panel discussion, which will be on June 23rd, which is a Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And we'll be sharing the posters very soon. Once again, thank you all for attending. Okay, there are a lot of comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed, for sharing your story again.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you.